Hello and welcome to all the alumni, students, faculty, and friends of the Faculty of Mathematics who are joining us today to our very first Waterloo Women's Impact Network webinar. You can find out more about WIN and its mission to improve the rate of women and women identifying to enter into STEM fields, STEM studies through the link available in the chat box. It's wonderful that even in the midst of these difficult and extraordinary times, the Waterloo Math family can still find ways to connect, engage, and share, especially to discuss two of my favorite topics, women in STEM and entrepreneurship. My name is Keer Liu. I'm currently in 4ACS in the Faculty of Mathematics, and I had the honor of being awarded the 2019 Math Co-op Student of the Year. I keep getting inspiration from many fantastic women in the tech field during my co-op experience with Apple, Uber, Slack, and several other tech startups. With a strong passion in the entrepreneurship, I'm also working on a startup with my Waterloo classmates where we build a co-watching platform for people to watch movies and chat together online when they are physically apart, especially amid the pandemic time. Like many of you here, I'm always eager to learn more from those outstanding women in the tech and entrepreneurship field. This evening, I have the pleasure of introducing our speakers today. Our moderator, Katie Witikop, and our panelist, Susan Heystee. Katie is the founding designer at Faire, a curated wholesale marketplace connecting more than 100,000 local retailers with thousands of emerging and established brands across the globe. As the first woman at the startup, Katie crafted the company's brand language and experiences with the end customer in mind. The female majority in Faire's customer base inspired Katie in the definition of the company's unique name, logo mark, culture, and identity. Along with the brand, Katie crafted the product design for all four initial products that were developed within the first 2 years of the company, including the vast wholesale marketplace, B2B market portal, iPad Ratio app, and iOS applications. Katie holds a BFA in graphic design from California Polytechnic State University. Susan has 30 plus years as an executive involved with critical enterprise platforms that have transformed a wide range of companies, both private and public, from utilities to transportation, field service, home care, and home delivery utilizing advanced technology, including SaaS, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, and advanced analytics. Her major strengths are proven expertise in successful go-to-market strategies, management of highly talented and globally located personnel, communications with C-level executives, and extensive enterprise knowledge and experience. Along with receiving a Bachelor of Mathematics from the University of Waterloo, Susan attended Harvard Business School in 2016, completing the Advanced Management Program as well in 2018 for the Women on Corporate Boards training. I know we all look forward to this meaningful fireside chat.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you, Keer, for that kind introduction. I'm thrilled to be here today to speak with you all on a subject that is really near and dear to my heart. I'm always inspired and in awe of the women in my life, and particularly those in leadership positions that are defying the odds stacked against them and breaking barriers across industries. To quickly set the stage before we dive into tonight's conversation, a 2020 Crunchbase report revealed that only 9% of total venture capital funding in 2019 went to female-founded or mixed co-founded companies, despite women representing over 40% of all entrepreneurs in the United States. What's more is that the latest AMX business report found that women-owned businesses are growing 2x faster than average businesses nationwide. Women in entrepreneurship have made some amazing strides over the past few years, but there's clearly more work to be done. And it's through these types of conversations and support from programs like Waterloo Women's Impact Network that we can continue to drive meaningful change. Tonight, we're going to cover a wide range of topics, from the journey to becoming a female entrepreneur, learnings and challenges along the way, the importance of networks and programs like WIN, incubator programs, as well as how COVID-19 has brought its own particular set of challenges to the female entrepreneurial landscape. All right, Susan, you ready?
I'm ready. Hey, Katie.
Hey,
Here. So nice. And Keer, congratulations on being the 2019 Math Co-op Student of the Year. That's awesome.
Well, let's get started on the first topic of the evening. Susan, we'd love to just kind of do a look back at the building of your career and the initial 30-year tenure that you've had as an executive, a board member, a startup guru, in addition to so many other things, and really those early decisions you made at the start of your career. So first question is, what are some key decisions you made as a recent graduate from the University of Waterloo that had a profound impact at the beginning of your career?
Thanks, Katie. And it's great to be here with you. And it's also just such an honor to join the Waterloo Women's Impact Network and be part of this webinar series. So looking back, wow, 30 plus years ago, graduating, it seems like a long time ago, but this year has been a long year too. So some of the key areas for me, co-op really played a significant role. And I did, as Keer mentioned, math co-op. I also did business administration with Wilfrid Laurier. And, it was a great opportunity to try different roles, different types of companies. And I landed in the software industry. It was one of my later co-op placements. And I just loved it. The pace of innovation, the rapid change in terms of technology. And at that time, software and off-the-shelf packages were really just coming into their existence with Oracle, SAP, Bond, who I worked for several years. And it was a great place to be. I had the opportunity through co-op to join a software company in the Waterloo region that was actually a privately held company that was part of the global software AG business. But it was very much a startup, and we were growing very, very rapidly. So it was a great place to start. I ended up starting as a program manager in their consulting business. So I spent a lot of time out with executives across all different industries, meeting with them and understanding what their business needs were. And then we would actually develop or deploy these packaged applications in their environment. So it was an exciting time. We were hiring constantly and expanding the team, and it was just an amazing group of people and an amazing CEO and entrepreneur that really encouraged the growth and really knew what it was to have a fantastic culture around this business and how important it was to invest in people and to innovate. So it was a great starting place for me.
You were at Software AG for 11 years, starting as a recent graduate, but then scaling all the way to an executive for the company. I would love to just pick your brain on how that growth really initialized and who were some mentors at that time for you during that considerable escalation to the company.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. You didn't so much think about what it meant and what the different stages were at that time. Everybody was just so busy going flat out, rolling up our sleeves because we were doubling the company almost every year. So it was still all about the people and attracting the talent. It was still a very competitive marketplace. We actually worked a lot with the university, and we were a very large, for our size of company and software, we employed a lot of co-op students. They were a big part of how we attracted talent into the business. And, it was a great place to work. And being an entrepreneur, we spent a lot of time around our purpose. What problem were we solving? Was it real? And how were we going to approach it? What was our solution? How were we going to build out our platform to make sure that we were actually solving it in a differentiated way, but that we were also mission critical and very relevant to the companies that we were working with. And then third, what was the evidence or proof points that in a startup and in our business at that time that we really needed to have. And that all came down to the team, how we were building out our culture, our platform, and how we were executing. So it was great experience. And our CEO at the time, Bob Nichols, who I'm actually still in touch with and still a mentor for me, he had some great advice too. And that was that, he said, you're going to work really hard, Susan. Obviously, we've got a lot of smart people, but, invest in yourself and look for opportunities down the road where you can place a bet on yourself and a team, whether it's founding your own startup, whether it's joining founders and scaling a startup, but look for those opportunities because they're going to provide the most growth, and really bet on yourself. And that was great advice. I was still in my 20s and in my first placement, and moved into a leadership position as part of the executive team very early on. But it was an environment where, there was great coaching and some great people that we were all learning, and things were changing so quickly that we just rolled up our sleeves and figured it out. We made mistakes and we learned from it, but really built out a great company from there.
I know you've mentioned Bob Nichols in the past for our prior conversations leading up to this chat, and it sounds like just a phenomenal mentor and partnership. Not to mention being the CEO, I'm sure has like a tremendous amount of respect in the company that he's built as well. I'm curious, what additional learnings you've gained from him as your mentor over the last couple of years?
I just don't overthink it. Yeah, and then the people are everything in the company. We very early on, he established, we would have we had all these young people and then young families that we would hold, an annual Christmas party for all the kids. And, they were always coming into the office because you were working crazy hours. And my kids to this day remember those Christmas parties. And it was a big part of the culture because you could see everybody growing up over the years that we were there. And in fact, later when I joined Telligis, we were a young startup, 15 million in revenue, growing very quickly. And we established some of those, norms and kids gatherings, and they were such a big part. And he understood that, when you're building out a company and people are going to work really hard, that, you're really supporting them in their career, in their growth. But, you spend a lot of time together, but their families are also really important. And he understood that. And, our families did become part of the company, but you never worked so hard or traveled. But, you still had somebody that would check in and see how you're doing. And in today, right now with COVID, with everyone working remotely, checking in with your team, checking in with your, and making sure your peers, and making sure that, do they have young kids at home right now? Do they have elderly parents? Are they in a 1-bedroom in New York quarantined? And really checking in with them and seeing how they're doing, because these are, very, unprecedented times, but really taking an interest in their well-being, as well as supporting them in their career and in their job as well. Today is so important, and it's a great way to stay connected, and to make sure that we're all driving things forward in terms of results for the business. And that's requiring a lot of energy, but, focus on the side of the person and where they're at is equally important today.
I think that's a phenomenal lesson, especially for startups that have, by default, much younger teams that are starting to grow out these families. I think it's really important to remember that culture not only stems from the employees, but the network behind them and the family that's supporting them, especially like you mentioned, the enormous effort is only going to be stronger if you have their family behind it and everybody connected.
Oh,
it's a really great lesson.
Hey, Katie, so you were the founding designer at Faire and scaled up the business there. I'd love to hear some more about your story.
Absolutely. So Faire is actually my first startup. I, prior to that, worked at Williams-Sonoma, which was a much kind of more larger corporate company where I specialized in packaging and print design. So like traditional graphic design, is what I majored in from Cal Poly. Moving into a UX agency was my next step in my career before I found out about Faire. And Faire had all the bits and pieces that I was looking for in a UX experience that I hadn't found at the agency. And I think that really comes down to the mission. Faire's mission, for those who didn't catch the beginning of this talk, is on a mission to improve and benefit and support local retail in every facet. So taking the wholesale industry online in a really big way. We have over 100,000 local ordering retailers across the United States and Canada ordering on Faire by the month. And we have over 15,000 brands that are supporting the website with millions of products being purchased across all these different micro kind of brand stores. So from a personal perspective, I've always loved local retail. And so immediately the mission was what got me in the door. But I can definitely echo a lot of your points, Susan, that the culture, the brand, the product, a lot of those initial kind of founding decisions were very much in the scope of what those early employees kind of were crafting. And so from a founding designer essentially is someone who crafts everything from the logo and brand look and feel to the product experience across iOS and desktop. So really nothing is too big or too small. Everything is kind of on your to-do list. And it's been a phenomenal ride and a really good learning lesson hearing from people like you who've been able to kind of see companies go from this more infant stage into the full maturity of robust companies.
That's awesome. I mean, brand is everything too, because it embodies your culture, your purpose, your customers, all your stakeholders. I mean, it really, and it goes across everything. It's also your reputation as well. So, so incredibly important.
Yeah, it can't just be a pretty picture. It has to have the merit behind it to really be, to speak what it preaches, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's fast forward a decade, and you've grown your career and started your new journey as Vice President of Global Strategic Partners at Novell. What were some experiences that were reminiscent of that classic startup culture we were just talking about that you experienced at Novell?
Well, Novell, as many of you may know, is quite a large public infrastructure software company, and I had the opportunity to join and then be president for the Americas, which was a lot of fun and great experience. But I'd have to say one of the most rewarding things there is in the end of 2006, we signed a landmark partnership with Microsoft, where there was some of you may recall the whole battle going on between Windows and Linux, and we were competing head to head out at all of the customers around the globe. And we made a decision together at the highest levels of Microsoft and Novell to actually enter into a partnership where we would work together. We would actually develop interoperability between Microsoft Windows, Active Directory, and SUSE Linux. And we would also have a co-marketing and an agreement where Microsoft would distribute certificates for SUSE Linux out to their customers. So they purchased 240 million of SUSE Linux certificates as part of this. And then there was a whole technical track and marketing, et cetera. And so I moved out of the president role and was asked by our CEO to build out this whole new business unit. And Susan Hauser over at Microsoft, who worked for Brad Smith, who was the president at the time, was also appointed. And so both Susans on both sides. And we literally, we had looked at in the first year, maybe doing about 15 million in sales. We weren't sure. It was a brand new partnership. You had these competitors that were fierce competitors for many years, now all of a sudden going out together. So we handpicked a team in North America. We started with the largest accounts because there was a lot of controversy around the partnership. And in the first year, we sold 125 million of SUSE Linux. Within 18 months, we had sold all 240 million and now had a recurring revenue business for SUSE Linux of over 100 million a year. And then it was actually a lot of fun to go back to Microsoft and have them sign for another 100 million, which was great. And that's the last deal that I did before I left Novell. And we then expanded the business into Japan, China, UK, all through Europe, all through Latin America, and very significant. And that's a great example of doing a startup within a larger company where you're bringing a team together, really picking top talent that want to do something completely new. So there's ways you can do a startup by starting a firm on your own, but there's also opportunities within larger companies, especially today, to start up a new business unit and, build a team and, and really achieve some, pretty incredible results and a great business in the process.
You mentioned so many different competing priorities. I think that's a really classic startup promise, is like there's so much work to be done with so few employees to do it. And there's always multiple hats to be worn across the way. How do you kind of think about competing priorities, especially in this example?
Your strength is really bringing in and building out a team that have that's diverse, that has different experience than you have, that has different skill sets, and really bringing that team together and making sure that people are not only on the bus but in the right seat on the bus. And for example, it didn't really make sense to ramp up a big team in Europe or ramp up a big delivery team until we had actually established and had proof points, which happened very, very quickly. But you've got to decide where you want to build the foundation, bring the team in that's really going to be the ones that put that in place, and do it today. I remember some of the technical team, because we signed the partnership in November, approached us in December when we were already closing business with Goldman and Walmart and others. And the customers loved the fact that we were working together and actually delivering on interoperability. We were actually solving a real need, which everything starts with that. And they were like, why are you out? What are you selling? It's like, well, we're selling what we have. You're going to deliver on the interoperability down the line. But there was such demand that, just we couldn't move fast enough. And we very much had a do it today culture. And we were just learning as we went. But, bring in, the people, surround yourself with people that have different experience and diversity of thought, and, learn along the way.
One of the questions we've talked about in the past is, especially as a mother of two, what advice would you give your daughter, and specifically women in general, considering to join a startup, either embedded in a company or completely, on their own?
Great question. I think my daughter actually might have joined the call, which is kind of cool. With both of my kids, it does come down to the people and the team, and building it out. Just to give you a kind of a funny story, when I joined Telligis, I left this, running a several $100 million business at Novell. And I took a job at this $15 million startup in Southern California. And I flew out here and rented a place, got a mattress, slept on the floor on this mattress. I had no furniture, nothing. I was traveling all over the place. I thought, what the heck am I doing? But it was the best thing I ever did. But at the time, my son was just finishing university. He was just in his final year. And so we actually hired Stephen to come in as an intern in the finance department. And then after he got there, and we were doubling the company every year. And then my daughter was like, well, I'd like to come. So she ended up joining the company. So I actually had the opportunity to work in this startup with both of my kids, both Chelsea and Steve. And it was great. I mean, what a unique opportunity, not only giving advice about going into a startup, but I thought, hey, they worked in different departments, and it was just awesome having them join. And you will see that in a lot of startups that are tapping talent, and it was awesome. So some other things that we talked about over the years as well is look for opportunities that provide you with the most growth. And I remember back a number of years ago when at Bond, the CEO called me, and I was running a large business unit, the consulting business for North America, and said, hey, we would like you to move into the president role for the Americas to run the bond business, which was a big ERP supply chain, similar to like an SAP, but for manufacturing. And I literally, and I can't believe I did this. Like, it was early on, but I can't believe it. I said, well, geez, like, are you sure? Like, I'm sure there are other people that have been a president before at a software company that have the experience. I haven't been a president before. Like, I think you should think this over. And, and then let's talk. Cause, and he was like, Susan, it was Lawrence Vandertang, who was the CEO. He said, yes, this is quite an important decision. We've actually thought this over, and we want you to take on the role. We have thought about you. We'd like you to think about it. And I went away from that. I thought, oh my God, all these studies that have been done where like a woman will approach a certain role and they will have done 8 out of the 10 areas of responsibility. And they'll be like, oh, but I haven't done the 2. I should maybe go learn that, tick those boxes, and then I'm going to be ready for it. A man will approach that same opportunity and say, wow, I've done 6 out of the 10 areas of responsibility. I'm like going to rock this. I'm totally qualified. And that, I shared that with my daughter and many of the women that I've worked with, is that, lean in. If you're being tapped to take on an opportunity that's, 6 or 8 out of the 10 areas, and it's a great, especially do what you love. Always do what you love. If you're not loving what you're doing, go somewhere else, and then look for those growth opportunities where you're going to be, learning those major new areas. And it was the best decision. I loved it. And I really enjoyed what I was doing. And then when you do take those roles, negotiate. Make sure you're negotiating for equitable comp, whether that's a work-life balance, whether it's travel, whether it's scope of your responsibility, but definitely negotiate. Whoever you're negotiating with, they can always say no, but then there's going to be a give to get later. But it's incredibly important to negotiate and make sure that you're also in an equitable position, and that you're set up for success. You're going to work hard, but make sure you have, the people, the investment that you need to be successful.
Fantastic advice. And I'm so glad that you've been able to share that with everyone, because I think I'm hoping everyone in this conversation can relate to the fact that these are all pieces of advice that ring true a lot for women in tech, and especially women who seek a tremendous amount of growth opportunities in these companies. I think completely applaud you for just adding the crispness and the concrete advice there.
And have fun along the way too.
Absolutely. You wouldn't be there in the beginning if you weren't.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to our second topic of tonight, which is since, all this impressive work that we kind of went through tonight, you work across numerous startup boards, and most importantly, are the managing director at Golden Seeds. In the last year, you've transformed your career into this board member role, and I'd love to just get a quick overview from you as to what these startups in your portfolio consist of.
Sure. So that's actually been a lot of fun. When I decided to step out of an operating role after we sold the company to Verizon, and I had a couple of years as part of that. It was an all-cash deal, and they bought the business for just under $1 billion. And I thought, okay, 2 years I worked with Verizon. And then I decided that I really wanted to stay in the startup world, working with founders and entrepreneurs. And so I joined the board of a LiDAR company called Ouster in San Francisco, and as well as a couple other software as a service companies in Orange County, Ravana, a SaaS company in San Francisco, Rumbix, that is digitizing construction with a mobile first approach. And it's fantastic to be working with the companies because they're in such a hyper growth mode, but they just know what they know, and they're building their teams. So as a board member, while you're not in a direct operating role, you can help them in terms of strategy, network, governance, making sure they have enough, fundraising, making sure they have enough capital. You don't want to run out of money. It's one thing you don't want to do is run out of money. And so making sure there's enough capital to actually fund the business. And this year with the pandemic and, that has been incredibly important. And you've seen several companies that have pivoted to, opportunities that, protect workers around health and safety. The LiDAR company Ouster is growing over 60% year on year, but they needed to go through a period where, they had to run cohorts to actually manufacture the product. But if anything, the demand for LiDAR around robotics and autonomous vehicles and robotaxis has just taken off. But you're, as a board member, you're really there for your judgment, you're there for your experience, and you're there to pitch in and help them however, wherever they need the help. And that's been, I just love it. And then Golden Seeds is a great organization. It's a network of C-level executives, and we invest in only women majority-owned startups. And it typically is a seed investment or Series A, but also there's follow-on investment. And there's some fantastic companies. And we either invest directly through an LLC or we invest through one of our major funds. But we also hold office hours. So any female budding entrepreneur can reach out to Golden Seeds. They have offices in New York, Boston, Silicon Valley, and San Francisco. And all of the due diligence and office hours are actually staffed by members who volunteer their time. And you can, sign up for office hours and go in and just say, hey, look at this pitch deck or this, this strategy or presentation or business plan, and they will spend time with you and provide you with coaching. So it's really a great organization.
Incredible. I would absolutely love feedback on some of my pitch decks so I may attend the office hours in the future.
And what's nice is you have members that are, CFOs, CEOs, CROs, lawyers, doctors. So it really is a diverse group, predominantly women, that really invest their time. And also, we also do the due diligence on all of the deals that we lead or syndicate with other firms.
I absolutely love talking about Golden Seeds because I really haven't heard of many investment companies similar. It's such a unique perspective and also something that's so relevant to this conversation. Picking up from your work at Golden Seeds, I'd love to get your perspective on something that actually came up through an internal Faire women's support group that we have inside of our startup. Articles came out from NPR and the New York Times recently in October of this year with headlines that hundreds of thousands of women are leaving the workforce due to the pandemic. And a direct quote is, in some families buckling under the caregiving burden, the lower wage earner is leaving the workforce, and usually that's the wife. I'm curious what your perspective is on this, especially if you've seen a change reflected in the work at Golden Seeds.
We've seen a number of women that they may, step back a little bit or try to go part-time, or even, they pick up a side hustle and become a side entrepreneur where, they're in a job where they can step out for a day or two a week and actually focus on a new endeavor. And then also there's, especially in California, where we just passed a proposition that really encouraged the gig economy and provided them the opportunity to still stay as a contractor and not an employee. So what that means is firms like Uber and Lyft, but many others could have, could actually leverage a gig economy, which provides a great opportunity for people that do want to step out and either do a startup, but still want to earn some money in terms of working part-time in whatever, their field of interest is. So there is a lot more flexibility today, to do that.
Regardless of gender, being a leader can often tie back to strong networks and relationships, as you mentioned earlier tonight. Can you talk a little bit about the incredible women networks you've developed during your career and how they've been beneficial to your overall growth?
I mean, networks are incredibly important. I would, I would always look at what is the network, not just for the role that you're in today, but what is your network for your next role or your next role of where you want to go? And then think about people that that could help you and you could help them. It's very much a two-way street. So when I moved from more operating roles at a company to board roles, I needed to get my name out there and reach out to, some of the VCs or family office VCs that I felt my objectives and my purpose was more aligned to, because I really wanted to make, work with companies that are really making the world better. And so I looked back into my network and invested time reaching out to a number of executives, many men that had served on private and public boards, provided them with my board bio, and also let them know exactly the type of company and board that I was interested in working with. And it's a lot of the board placements, it's through network. So it's really important to both give to your network, whether it's forming women's circles, participating and supporting, the Waterloo women, network as well. That it's incredibly important to both be giving your time and supporting those networks, as well as, curating your own network. And what was your network when you were, in co-op in school, may be different than the network that it is when you're in an operating role or moving to other types of opportunities. So, seek out people. Reputation is everything, and really invest the time, because what you give, you're always going to receive back.
I want to be mindful of time. We have about 10 minutes left, and a couple more, hopefully like rapid fire Q&A fun questions to lighten it up at the end of our of our talk. As we begin to wrap up the conversation for the evening, our final topic for you, Susan, is a reflection on how COVID 2020 and working from home has affected you and your family. Do you have a daily work from home routine now that we're all working from home? And if so, what is it?
Trying to. You're on so much Zoom, and that I've never cooked so much in my life as well. That, I'm trying to fit in still time for myself. I'm a big runner. I love to cycle, love my Peloton, and I'm big time into yoga. So I really try to take the time to get a run in, or jump on the Peloton, or go out on my, go out for a couple hour ride. And, you need to time, you've got to have time for yourself. You got to keep your mind active, but you need to really keep your body active and safely, go out and exercise and safely do things with the family, because we're spending so much time on Zoom and in meetings that I find that just jumping out for a run, or, joining a Zoom yoga class with like 100 people, is awesome. And it's a great way. And I've done that throughout my career, whether I was traveling 90% to, Japan, or all through Asia to Europe and Latin America. If you don't find the time to, a fit mind, and if, you need to stay fit yourself and be mindful of your own well-being. And I really encourage everyone to do that, and to take time and connect, with people that are in your extended network, to check in with them as well. And it does give you some balance and perspective. But
it's such a good reminder, especially with back-to-back Zoom meetings that I'm sure are part of a lot of our day-to-days. Actually, speaking with you, Susan, is a reminder of how important it is to have like a healthy mind and a healthy body. This year, because of COVID 2020, I recently adopted a corgi puppy, and he's my forced work from home life balance.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
He encourages the walks even when I don't want to go.
Yeah.
All right, our last question for you is I recently found out that not just at home, but you also have to stay active when you travel. I would love to just end with a travel story from one of your favorite bike trips, considering the world that we live in is all in our living rooms this year.
Yeah, I would probably my favorite was Vietnam and Cambodia, and cycling through, around water buffalo, and that was amazing. But a year ago, I had the opportunity to take a cycling trip with my son on the west coast of Japan, who just turned 30. And we hadn't been on a trip for a while. So we cycled with Backroads, which is based out of San Francisco. We've done several trips with them. And we went over to Japan and just had a fantastic time cycling and going all through the West Coast and wrapping up in Kyoto. Beautiful country. And it was an awesome, awesome trip. So
well,
trying to travel again. Hopefully
no kidding.
Soon. Oh man, hopefully soon.
You've been to so many adventurous places. I feel like we could do a whole nother seminar just talking about that, to be honest. I'd love to hear about Cambodia.
Oh, Cambodia is wonderful. Yeah, it's really, really amazing.
Well, I think with a few minutes left, I would just love to do any kind of like closeout thoughts that you might want to have to share with the group. Anything we didn't talk about tonight, as well as unanswered questions will go in an article after this event, but would just love to give you the floor.
And then the same with you too, Katie. I love the conversation, and it's especially for a lot of the women on the call that are on the early start of their career. It's such a journey. You're going to have probably on average 3 to 4 to even 5 different major career pivots as you go along. Really, really enjoy it. Enjoy the journey. I can tell you it goes fast. But I've been so fortunate to work with some amazing people. And fortunately, I've only found myself in a situation once or maybe twice where, I didn't feel like it was the right place for me. And I just, went on and did something else. And, that to me is take the opportunities that provide the biggest growth. It's scary at times, but they're the most rewarding and the most interesting, and the ones that will be the most memorable. And Katie, what are your thoughts?
I echo so much of your final remark there, Susan. I think that sometimes the hardest jobs are the best jobs, and the ones that put pressure on all these pieces are just room for growth and opportunity. As someone who has only had 3 companies in their past career, I can say that my exposure is definitely smaller. But in that same lens, I'm so inspired by their talk tonight, and just the overwhelming kind of thoughtfulness that you put into your team and culture. I think is really representative of women, especially in startup leadership today. And looking forward to all the people that are inspired to come join the journey along with us. All right. Well, everybody, I guess we'll wrap up for this evening, but thank you all for joining, and Keer and Susan for participating in such an amazing event, and to the Waterloo Women's Impact Network, WIN, as I've been told, for putting on such an important event. Finally, as any good leader, I've got a bat for my home team. If anyone is interested in joining Faire, please reach out by applying to our career page. We're looking to substantially grow our team over the next year in both Kitchener and Toronto, and are looking forward to your application.